any of them?
By grant?
The ones that you said were continued?
Yeah,
Most-
and
most of
29,
today's
I
continued.
wasn't
Even the
out on
Lewis
site visits.
Boulevard.
I didn't get a-
Recording in progress.
Oh, I guess we're ready.
Okay, we're ready.
But they're coming in, they're at least booting it off, or no, they're not?
I don't know what your question is.
Did they send in a letter asking for a continuance to the 17th?
Not to August 7th.
So it's,
David's got all the info we need.
right, I'm not gonna worry about it then. I was gonna make an announcement to let people know in case there's
Nobody's here
people
for
waiting
those.
for them, but you'll just have to wait then. All right, welcome everybody to the regularly stated meeting of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. Today's the meeting for Thursday, July 3rd, 2025. We are going to get right into things. First item of business is the reorganization of the commission. So we have some issues here. We're looking for chair and secretary. Paul, are you still looking to maintain vice
Yeah,
chair?
sure.
Yes?
Like, sure, yeah.
But does anyone, okay.
Unless there's somebody who really wants that position badly, but I'm fine with it.
Okay, so for chairman, David has offered his services. I would make the motion to make David Bernstein the chairman. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
I think. We'll find out.
I still get to sit next to you?
Yes, you do. You get to see the better side of me.
Okay. Then for secretary, did somebody want to do the secretary position? Pat? Pat would like to do that? Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
I will.
So we'll take it in second from Paul. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Congratulations.
And with that, I will relinquish, huh?
I heard some interest from somebody else for vice chair. So are we, Bradford, were you interested in vice chair?
Oh, did you?
Express interest in vice chair if, Paul, you don't want to continue, but.
No, I'll continue, but if I have it, I'd like to continue, actually, all kidding aside, that'd be fine.
Yeah, so that's fine.
We're good? Sorry, I didn't know there was a confusion there, but with that, we will make our peaceful transfer of power. Congratulations. I realized I don't have.
Ed, is this your phone?
Oh, yes, it is. Thank
I don't
you.
get the phone, do I?
No, you don't get the phone
You just get that big stack of files.
unless you want to pay the bill too.
Take a minute.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank Ed for all the work he's done over the years as chairman. Since I've been on the commission, he's been chair, and his knowledge is important to all of us, and hopefully he'll still be around for us to ask him questions. So I'll move ahead with the, and bear with me, this is my first time. We'll start with the continued notice of intent of SE 83-2477, Horsley Witten Group for Town of Yarmouth, 220 South Street, otherwise known as Smugglers Beach, South Middle Beach, and Juden Way. Proposed beach management, including maintenance, raking, sand fencing on coastal beach, and LSCSV. Somebody presenting? I guess you are.
I am. Good evening. For the record, Amy Ball, Senior Associate with the Horsley Witten Group. Here to represent the town Department of Public Works Parks Division in the presentation of two different beach management plans, one for Smugglers Beach or Bass River Beach, and the other for South Middle Beach and Juden Way. Given that they're the close proximity, we combined them. We have submitted management plans for each of these areas. They cover a number of, there we go. So for proximity, Bass River is coming in from the north on the eastern side of the page here, the right-hand side of the page, and that's where Smuggler's Beach is at 220 South Street. And then a little bit further to the west, you have South Middle Beach and the Juden Way right-of-way. Each of these have coastal beach, coastal dune, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and then, of course, the proximity to the land under the ocean. They're also all located within priority and estimated habitat for, at the very least, piping plovers. So we had filed this a while back and got some comments back from Natural Heritage about some additional things that they'd like to see within each of the plans regarding the protection of the plovers. And most recently just submitted updated plans that will ultimately become all black in font. But the changes that we had made are in red font from a couple days ago. And the overall management, I'm going to go to the next couple of pages. These are just some photographs. I'm certain that the commission is probably familiar with both of these. Overall, the management plans have some locations of existing beach raking that is occurring and just needs to be brought into compliance with an actual plan that is what we're asking the commission to approve. It has areas of where the raking is occurring. Natural Heritage had asked us to also show where the shade structure and the volleyball area are actually at Smuggler's Beach. And then asked us to incorporate some discussion about whether there are any beach grass plantings that would occur within the dunes, in part because they were concerned about making sure that the habitat for the piping plovers is preserved, not having it terribly dense with beach grass. Let me try the next one. This is the South Middle Beach, just a few areas of the entrance there. It's coming in off of the road there. It actually has an entrance through the woods, which makes it, in my opinion, a little bit unique. And then I think the Juden Way is the next one, which is just directly south of the road itself. And it is a fairly narrow strip, and there is a private property that is located between Juden Way, and then there's a private property to the east, and then it's South Middle Beach. And this too has areas of the, hi Rovi. This too has areas of where the beach management is occurring and how close they can get to the dunes, et cetera. So the key points of the management plan is that they both have proactive measures that the DPW takes care of in the maintenance of the beaches, and also reactive. Reactive meaning seaweed that may come up and accumulate on the beaches and how that's being handled, how the access points are maintained. Smuggler's Beach, which is the most popular beach, as I understand it, in town, has something like 9 different entrances, and these need to be kept free. Some of them have the beach mats over them, kept free of the sand, but also have some snow fencing around the edges of the dunes to protect the dunes from the trampling of the recreating public. They each have a plan for the seaweed management and, the overcare of the structures and amenities of the plants themselves, but also the types of equipment and the management. A good deal of this is usually managed right at the very beginning of the spring, and I use that term loosely, like March, because come April 1st, that's when the plovers start to come back. And so Natural Heritage made sure that we had maintained like a time of year restriction for beach management activities short of emergencies. And the town has a contract with Mass Audubon and their shorebird experts who will come in and monitor for the presence of piping plovers or terns or other nesting shorebirds, and also nesting behavior. And if they find that, then they erect the exclusion fencing, primarily at the fore dune, and then they are there on a frequent presence to keep an eye out on activities, making sure that the nests are protected and the fledglings are protected, et cetera. And those protective measures for the shorebirds was the reason we had to continue it from last time, even though we hadn't presented it yet, to address some of the concerns that Natural Heritage had about protection, the very specific protections about the plovers. And then finally, of course, all of these measures are intended to protect the resource areas themselves and to make sure that the activities are meeting the performance standards for having no adverse effect on the beaches and the dunes. I think that's just about it. We do go into a discussion about the maintenance activities, the beach raking, how the DPW is meant to stay back at least a minimum of 15 feet from the base of the dunes to be protective of the integrity of the frontal dunes there. We talked about the Mass Audubon and the time of year restrictions. And the final thing that Natural Heritage had asked for was, are there rules, that govern the beaches? And they asked us to incorporate, the town has rules for beaches and parks, correct? And those are effective as of 2009. So those have been appended to these management plans that we submitted. I think that's it. So I will turn it back to the commission for questions.
Anybody from the board have questions from the commission?
I do.
Go ahead.
You mentioned there were beach mats that go out on the beach. I don't think I recall seeing that within the beach management plan, or saw them on the plans.
It may not be called out specifically. There is one on Judan Way. It gets rolled out in the spring and brought back in at the end of the season. Those are called Moby mats. We do have another one, I believe. Yeah, it's not going to show up there.
No.
Yeah, it's not going to show up there.
Is it on this side?
It's at D. I mean, we
No.
sort of arbitrarily named these, but
I thought it was.
I think it's the
I think
far one, is it?
I hear you back there. I think it's, I don't know what those letters are. I think it's actually pretty
C.
close to where your cursor is.
This one?
Yeah, I think so. This doesn't show in any of the pictures because most of those pictures were taken off-season, so.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be helpful to see that on the plan and understand
Sure.
how far it's.
Sure, we can
coming
absolutely
out.
add that. I'm sorry to be late. Forgive me. My name is Roby Whitehouse. I'm the Assistant DPW Director. I was actually on the phone with people who were at Smuggler's Beach today. That's what held me up. I do apologize. It was very crowded today.
It was a good beach day.
Okay, any other questions for Bradford?
I have a couple questions, actually. Regarding the grass planting, I believe Natural Heritage wanted to know the total area per year annually. The additions that you made were 100 to 200 per location, but it didn't really indicate how many locations that would be in any given year.
If you, can you
Yeah, which?
back to that plan?
Okay.
They're basically at the entrances of in and around the entrances, if they occur. I don't understand that they may or may not actually occur. That's more of a reactive measure, is if the DPW, or in conjunction with Natural Resources and Conservation, determined that there's been some erosion or there's some need to, enhance the dunes, then those get planted. So they asked us to just incorporate it. And depending on where the plantings occur, it's usually like a couple of culms per hole, but it's denser if you're going to put it further back from the front of the dunes. And because of the type of habitat that the piping plovers prefer to nest in, which is more of an open sand area, they asked us to put them further apart. So behind the dunes would be more like 18 inches, 12, 18 inches apart. And in the four dunes, they would ask them to do about 36 inches on center.
Okay. And then also with the natural heritage letter, they had called out identifying who the enforcement is for it. And also with the beach rules, it mentions like no dogs and stuff like that, but it doesn't, the beach management plan doesn't outline who should be called to enforce those issues, such as like the dog walker, or the police, or
Right.
something
So
like
Roby can probably speak to this, but as I understand it, it's a joint effort between DPW, Natural Resources, and Conservation
that. Okay.
staff.
But enforcement, you're right. So it's regarding the dogs, natural resources, under natural resources is animal control. So typically, if they're on duty, we would call animal control or natural resources to assist with that. So hopefully that helps.
Okay. It wasn't very clear within the management plan itself.
Oh, okay, the enforcement piece?
The enforcement piece.
So we can clarify that.
And then more just generally, I was a little confused on what defines a reactive versus proactive management activity. There seemed to be some inconsistencies on what was considered proactive versus reactive.
The proactive activities are the types of things that have to be done on a regular basis. The maintaining of the open beach entrances, that sort of thing. Cleaning the beaches before the season begins. Reactive would be something, if there was a big storm or something blew up on the beach and they needed to get out there and clean out, a deposit of a lot of seaweed or, things like that. It needs to be cleared off the beach before it becomes a health hazard.
Okay.
I could give you an example of the reactive. We had a storm just within the past 2 years that brought a great deal of sand up onto the beach and onto a walkway, a cement walkway, that people couldn't walk on without potentially hurting themselves. And we shoveled it off, but you can't shovel it into the dunes, so we had to remove it and move it down the beach. That was reactive. And so if you're looking for us to clarify that with examples, we can certainly do that.
I guess I was a little confused, like you mentioned the beach planting would be reactive, but that would be done before April 1st, whereas putting up the sun structure is proactive, but that would be done around May 15th. So it just seemed a little confusing to me.
So part of the reason that, the beach grass would be a reactive thing, but it's a maintenance activity. When you plant beach grasses in dunes, as I understand it, that usually has to happen most successfully happens between like December and April 1st. And since Natural Heritage wants us out of there and not being, maintaining the beaches, that would have to happen sometime in March usually. So that would be it's reactive in that they're reacting to potential like erosion issues within the dune, but it's also part of the maintenance of making sure that the beach is ready for the season, but also is protective of the resource area, which is making sure that the integrity of the dune is still there.
Understood. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Yes, I just want to be clear, and I know it's in the report, but I just want to be clear, sort of to piggyback on your concerns about the Moby mats. There's no intent to add any more access paths, right? And so the existing ones remain, right? And those will they all get Moby mats, or with the objective that you don't want trampling over,
Over the dunes, right?
We're not looking to add additional Moby mats. Is that what you're asking? I'm sorry.
Is every access path going to have a Moby mat?
No, you mean, we currently have 2.
So you're going to identify which.
We will identify where they are, and we're not adding any additional ones.
Okay, thank you.
Jack?
Mass Audubon works with you on checking how close nesting or whatever is close to the Moby mats?
They report to us weekly in a written report, and their focus is where the nests are. They don't necessarily isolate the Moby mats, but they're very conscious of where any one or anything is going near the nests, and they do report on that.
So who's responsible? They'll probably report it to you, but who would be responsible being sure if the mats need to be moved out or?
Our team, the Parks Division,
Okay.
is focusing on those Moby mats and conscious of
They
their
would talk to
condition.
Audubon.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yep. That's the benefit of that written report from the Audubon, because they may see something that our team might miss, and we're getting those weekly reports from them, and if something jumps out at us in that report, we will be reactive to it.
Okay. Anybody else? I have just two questions. One has to do with raking. How often do you expect to be raking?
I believe we asked for twice a week. We are actually, at this point, I think, only raking once a week. We're working directly with Audubon, and it's when they're available. But we, obviously, depending on where the birds are, our wonderful piping plovers, we have to be very cautious of that, and we are, very strict about whether or not we have any staffing from Audubon there in order for us to rake, and right now, we're raking once a week.
Okay, and my other question is about taking care of people who bring their dogs onto the beach. I walk Seagull Beach probably 5 times a week, and if I'm there at 6, 6:30, 7, there are multiple people with dogs. If I'm there at 8, that's it, nobody's there. So I just want to let you know that there are people who take advantage of the fact nobody's on duty, I guess. So,
We hear and we see that in the reports from Audubon.
yeah,
Our team is not there, so, but are we aware of it? It is definitely called out in those reports from the team that's out there checking on it.
okay.
It's posted,
Anybody else
though,
on the
right?
board?
It is posted.
Anybody out in the audience? Any comments? Anybody on, go ahead. You want to step up there?
Hi, Dave Condon, Director of Natural Resources. I'd love to chime in on the dog thing. Yeah, our staff generally works daytime, but the more complaints we get, the more of a better idea we get when people are actually there with dogs. I mean, we don't have the staff to be here 24/7, but if you're there at 6 in the morning, I would encourage you to call every time, because then we'll be there at 6 in the morning.
Okay.
And that would be anybody at the beach, because, yeah, we don't want those dogs in there either. So, yeah, any complaints would be well received at our office.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Anybody online? I don't think I see anybody. Any hands raised? No? Now it's up to you.
Okay, I thought you might forget about me for a second there.
No, I would never forget that.
My only comments would be, I'm proposing to the commission to include 3 special conditions. One of them you see annually, previously on your maintenance request, that the height at South Middle Beach needs to be maintained and not plowed through to maintain that path there, so the dune elevation has to remain. And preseason meetings would be required for any maintenance that's not specifically addressed in this plan, and any of the reactive measures that aren't clearly defined would need to be submitted in writing prior to implementation. And if any changes are needed, written edits will be submitted and approved by staff if minor, and a hearing will be held if necessary. And the last the question I had was, I wasn't sure if you had a disposal strategy outlined for the raking debris.
I do not have a written plan. I know we have a plan for how we're handling seaweed, but in emergency situations, we would have to work with yourself and our health department to determine what we're going to do with the seaweed if we have to remove it from site.
I'm not referring to seaweed, I'm talking about your twice a week raking debris.
Oh,
So I would request that you guys submit a written strategy for disposal of the raking debris.
okay. I thought we had a plan.
I didn't see it in there. Did anyone pick up?
I was thinking seaweed, but I guess I wasn't thinking anything
Other debris, yeah.
other than
The shells and
shells.
trash. Do you take it to the dump?
I don't think so.
Okay, we just,
We can, I'll follow up on that.
Now, on our list, did we get all the NHECP comments? Are there
We
some still
haven't-
pending?
They're still pending, so it's my understanding that Amy spoke with them on the phone, and you addressed most of, if not all of their comments with the supplemental information that we received this week. So the board can either decide to issue pending all the plan revisions we spoke about tonight and receipt of NHESP requirements, or you can decide to continue for revised plans and receipt of the comment.
What's the wish of the board?
I would prefer to see a revised plan, but that's just me.
I think you should wait for Natural Heritage to chime in officially and then close it.
Okay, so can I hear a motion to continue to, can we have that done by
17th.
17th?
It's a
That
to
depends on
NHESP,
Natural Heritage.
but yeah,
They
we-
reset their clock at 30 days every time they get new things. So we can aim for the 17th, and if we have not heard back from them, we could continue it to August 7th.
7th, okay. I hear a motion?
So moved.
Jeff?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So I just put this aside?
Yeah.
Okay. Our next is SE 832479 Crawford Land Management for Will Rubenstein, Elisha's Pond, proposed treatment of invasive hydrilla through chemical and physical means in a great pond. They're asking for a continuance till August 7th, also waiting for NHESP, so.
Move to continue to August 7th.
Okay, second, anybody?
Second.
Second, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, moving right along.
We've got work to do.
And that's this one, right? No, this is 11,
Yeah, 11:29.
yeah, but where's the one I just voted on?
We don't need anything. for
Okay.
that.
All right, so we're at SE 832481, Schofield Brothers of Cape Cod for Henry and Nicholas Kasdan, 1129 Great Island Road. Proposed new dwelling and guest house in a buffer zone to a coastal bank in BVW with stairs to a coastal beach in a velocity flood zone and coastal bank. And, yes,
Hey,
introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
yes, good afternoon. For the record, I'm Laura Schofield from Schofield Brothers, and I'm here representing the Kasdan family. I initially presented this project to the commission at the June 5th public hearing, but we couldn't close because we hadn't heard from Natural Heritage. So I had gone over the project in depth at that meeting, but it's been a while because of the Juneteenth holiday. So I was just going to quickly give the commission a recap because I know you've got a long agenda tonight, and it's also been a while since you initially heard the project. So this is a single-family dwelling and guest house that are proposed on a vacant wooded lot, along with a proposed elevated wooden stairway to access the beach. The property fronts on Nantucket Sound and has several coastal and inland wetland resource areas. As we discussed at our initial hearing, they're either on the property or their buffer zones overlap the property and impact the project. Brittany had also requested some additional information on the elevated stairway that's been provided. It's a routine elevated wooden stairway. It lands on the beach well above high mean water, and the chosen location is protected by an existing jetty, and there's an existing clearing at the top of the bank already, so that kind of lends itself to a nice spot to tuck in the stairway. And there's also limited, I think we only have to prune one branch on the bank to fit the stairway in there. So that information has been provided, and also Natural Heritage has responded to our application since our last hearing. They've weighed in to determine that the project will not adversely impact any endangered species. And then just to quickly sum up the project again, most all of the project is out, except for the stairway, of course. The project is mostly entirely outside of the 100-foot buffer to the coastal bank. There's 36 square feet of patio area to serve the main house that's dipping its toe into the buffer zone. The rest of the disturbance will be for some minor grading during construction, but after that, most of the buffer zone is going to revert to a naturally vegetated state. And the main house is mostly outside of the 100-foot buffer zone to the inland wetland resource areas as well. The screen porch is minimally 71 feet from the edge of the BVW and the pond. The guest house is 60 feet from the edge of the BVW and the pond. And collectively, in terms of permanent alteration in the buffer zone, there's about 2,500 square feet, including the building itself and the decks and the porches that will be within the buffer zone. That's about 6% of the total buffer zone on the property. And obviously, there'll be more alteration within the buffer zone for installation of the dry wells and things like that. But once the house is constructed, those areas will be revegetated with native vegetation as well. So Mary LeBlanc is the landscape architect on the project, and she has taken into account your local mitigation requirements for the buffer zone, and those requirements have been satisfied. Most of the trees that will be removed for the project are oak trees, and so Mary has called for mostly oak trees to replace the trees that will come out in terms of the project. And then there's some other native shrubs and grasses that will be proposed as well. No work is proposed within the 50-foot buffer zones. Neither of the dwellings will be within any floodplain. And we have called for erosion control that will also act as a work limit, and the driveway and the septic system are entirely outside of the buffer zones. And there will also be a great deal of upland area that's preserved with the project as well. And that's it, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission has.
Anybody on the commission have questions? We'll start with Ellen.
Oh, okay. I'm referring to your documents in front, and there's just a statement here that it would be preferred to be more absolute. On sheet 3 of 3, under the construction notes, it says inspection for future erosive conditions in post vicinity is recommended. So you're speaking of the posts for the stairwell, and you're recommending, but we need to be more definitive. Are you going to have? Are you going to do it or not do it?
I think in a case like that, when you have a coastal stairway, if you start to have an issue, that it gets addressed, because number one, it's probably a safety issue, and that usually requires coming back to the commission. So if there was a storm event that required maintenance or repair, that would definitely come back to the commission.
Ellie, I was going to recommend that occasionally for this type of project, we would require monitoring reports as a typical special condition, and that could be included as a requirement in the monitoring reports if you wish.
Okay. And then I have just one last question on sheet 2 of 3 under general notes. Just where is the stockpile location for all strip topsoil and subsoil to be stockpiled and reused at owner's option? And then you're going to respread it. Where would the stockpile be located?
You're referring to the septic system? Probably within the driveway area, because we wouldn't want to have to clear other areas of the upland that we're trying to preserve. So and actually a lot of times they'll just put it in a truck and take it somewhere and then bring it back. So we don't want to be disturbing parts of the upland that we're trying to protect. So that's a note that refers to the leaching area, and that's out in the upland. That's outside of the buffer zone.
Would you be amenable to a condition requiring stockpiling in the driveway or outside buffer zones?
Sure. Yep, that's no problem.
Thank you, that's all.
Ed?
Just construction activity is all coming from the top side down. Is that right?
The stairs.
No equipment on the beach.
Oh, right, nope.
Okay. And then I would just again ask monitoring reports. You're looking. Do you want 3 years? Would be good.
Yep.
That's all I got.
Anybody else? No. Let's have a question about if a storm does come and ruins the stairs. We talked about maybe labeling the boards with some kind of address so people know where it came from, and especially on that south side, on that side.
You do that in Barnstable, right? Or no?
For steps, not for steps. For docks, we do.
Docks,
Yeah.
okay.
Anybody in the audience? Anybody online? I don't see anybody. Okay.
I just have a quorum clarification. Ed and Ellie, you weren't present at the 6-5 hearing. Did you watch the video for these? And we'll just have to have you sign the Mullins form if you want to vote.
Oh, I can't vote then. Thank you for reminding me. It's like, it didn't sound familiar to me, but
Yeah, what about you, Ellie?
Yeah, what's
I
the
think,
question again?
did you watch the video from 6-5 or read the minutes?
I didn't watch the entire meeting.
But did you watch the minute, read the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll have you sign a form so that you can vote.
In front of me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I will do that now.
Okay.
And you have anything, Ms. Brittany?
No, that's all. Thank you.
So can I hear whether, with all these conditions, whether we would accept the permit, grant the permit? I have a motion. Jack?
Yep.
Second?
Second.
Second, Pat? Okay, all in favor of granting motion with the conditions that we spelled out earlier?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Moving ahead, SE 83-2482, Ryder Wilcox for James McCartney on 27 Grist Mill. After the fact filing for unpermitted patio, retaining walls and fill within the flood zone and buffer zone to a salt marsh. They're asking for a continuance, just to let everybody on the commission know. This would be their second continuance, so do I hear a motion to grant the continuance?
so moved.
Second.
Okay, Ed and
Second.
Ellie?
Go, Ellie.
Okay, all in favor of granting the continuance, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on. Okay, SE 83-2480, Down Cape Engineering for Yarmouth Shores Condo Association, 29 Lewis Bay Boulevard, proposed reconstruction, revetment, and ramps and coastal bank and land under the ocean, and LSCSF, and they just asked for a continuance, am I right?
Yes, they submitted a late continuance request to August 7th.
August 7th. And is that their first? Sorry.
This is the applicant's first continuance request. Yeah, we required the first continuance.
Ed,
So, yep, so
Anybody
moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Bradford, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, that passes. Moving right along. Woods Hole Group for Town of Yarmouth, Packet Landing, 377 Bridge Street, proposed elevation and reconstruction of timber wharf, sheet pile bulkhead, paved parking lot with drainage improvements for coastal resilience in the waterfront area, coastal bank, LSCSF, land under the ocean and buffer zone to a coastal bank. And,
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself for this one.
okay. I can hear that.
Okay.
You need to put that in.
Is that correct?
Thank you. Just down. You guys are all set. Yep.
Good evening. I'm Dave Condon. I'm the Director of Natural Resources for the Town of Yarmouth. Just briefly introduce the project. This is a project that we're really excited about. Brittany will give you some of the history here of how we got here, but as we all know, Packet Landing is a highly utilized asset to the town for both recreational boaters, commercial fishermen, and public safety boats. We have 2 of our boats there. The fireboat is there. We use that for emergency medical evac. We use it's our #1 facility on the water in the town as far as we're concerned. And anytime we have a storm event, the whole parking lot, well, half the parking lot ends up under the water. The gangway ends up so we can't use it safely. We can't access our boats. We can't get down there. And this project that we're proposing today is got the support and funding of Office of Coastal Zone Management behind it. It's a project that they feel is going to continue to be funded, hopefully. I mean, we're in just entering year 2 of the first grant cycle here with a 2-year project for the design and permitting. But they've already kind of given us the wink and the nod that we think we're going to continue to get that funding as we move forward. The proposal, as you see, is to raise the parking lot by approximately 3 feet, reconstruct the bulkhead there, and the timber pier. And I'll turn it over to these guys. This is Cole Bateman from Time Bond and Brittany Hofnagel from Woods Hole Group. They're the consultant and engineer on the project, and I'll turn it over to them.
Thanks, Dave. Good evening, everyone. Good to be here. Just want to reiterate a few things that David said. Packet Landing Marina, located along the Bass River, south of Route 28, and primarily serving a few functions, whether it's commercial fishing, offloading, and recreational boating, and also serves as a launch point for a marine-based emergency response. Next slide. And so, as David mentioned, is that it does face its own challenges during it gets flooded from periodic storm and extreme water level events. Keep going. This leads to potential restriction in access. Being underwater can lead to wear and tear on the infrastructure and equipment, and could potentially have a negative impact on the economic, the economy here, on bringing in shellfish and fish and recreational boats. And just wanted to highlight that this is not limited to just Packet Landing. This shoreline with the abutters just south of Packet Landing also experiences challenges from the flooding from extreme water levels. So just wanted to point out that water level beyond the seawalls of the abutters as well. And not only is this, a current day problem, but we also assessed this project in the light of how sea level rise might occur in the future. And so, if we're seeing events like this twice or 3 times a year with rising in sea levels, we could start to see this flooding along Packet Landing, even during a mean high water event, or every day during the mean high water flooding. So this is just a graphic kind of showing where flooding might occur when you consider mean high water in future conditions. So just to wrap up, that in 2024, we did complete an alternatives assessment where we developed concepts that were along the protect, elevate, and accommodate themes. So can we build a wall around it to protect the site from flooding? Elevating is actually, can we lift the site out of the zone of flooding, or can we accommodate, does it make sense to retreat a little bit to accommodate some of that stormwater and storm surge and mean high water flooding? So through the project, through the town, through some community meetings, the town decided to go through the Elevate alternative. So that was the preferred alternative, which focused on the 4 main points of elevating the parking lot, removing the timber bulkhead and new installation of the continuous sheet pile, reconstruction of the wharf, add an elevated boardwalk and install new gangways for additional access, and repoint the stone revetment and reconfigure stormwater system. So from this point, next slide, I'm going to pass it over to our partner Cole, and he's going to walk you through the individual elements of the construction, and hopefully that'll give you an idea of the components that are being proposed.
Thanks, Brittany. Hi, I'm Cole Bateman. I'm a professional engineer and project manager with Ty & Bond, and I'm representing obviously the town of Yarmouth with Woods Hole Group here tonight, and I'll be talking about the engineering aspect of the project. So currently, it's a low-lying parking lot. It floods under not only extreme weather events, but just high tides to make it unusable. So part of this project is to elevate that parking lot. This first image on the left is the existing parking lot, which is elevation 3.5 NAVD 88 at the low end, relatively low compared to mean high water. There's also 19 existing parking spaces, which at some points does get congested in the lot and forces off parking lot parking. So we look to aim to increase the parking with this project to prevent that, as well as enhance the stormwater features. So on the right, we're showing the proposed parking layout with the new sheet pile bulkhead, which I'll talk to you in a sec. We're reconfiguring portions of the parking lot to retain some of the site soil. That's at the south end where that the squiggly line comes in, returns to the project site. And because of that, we're losing a couple spots in the circulation relative to that bulkhead. So we're looking to expand the parking lot coverage and also increase the count by 2 spots in the left with the red hatch. At the north end of the project site, north up, is an expanded brick access way to a new gangway and the existing handicap parking spot, which will be restriped in the new parking lot layout. Next slide, please. The next item I'll talk about is the existing bulkhead. So at the south end of the project site, there's a timber bulkhead that wraps around to the neighboring abutted property to the south, and then also continues underneath the east end of the wharf, the landward end of the wharf. During our investigation at the beginning of the project, we found that that bulkhead was largely in disrepair. There was holes in it. It was leaking some material and needs to generally be replaced, consistent with also raising the parking lot. So with this proposed strategy, we look to replace that lower bulkhead. We're actually retreating it back onto the property. Further into the property to not take up more of the coastal beach resource area. And then we're also expanding it lengthwise to dive into elevation 7, which is the target parking lot elevation. So the length of it goes to about 360 feet. I don't have the exact number of the existing length, but it's quite a bit more, and that is to retain the new parking lot elevation, provide more resilience for the parking lot. I also like to point out at the south end of the site, we do have the opportunity shown for potential alignment of butter bulkheads should that become a thing. The next slide, please. Thanks. Kind of tied with the bulkhead is an existing timber wharf. This is used for offloading, loading, I think it's fishing, generally a lot of use for this wharf. Its function is tied to being close to the water. So the elevation of this wharf was kind of separated from the rest of the parking lot to kind of keep more water access, only increase it 1.2 feet compared to the parking lot elevation of 3. And to enhance it for those sunny day floods and those other flood events, but still provide protection for some use. So it'll be reconstructed in the same footprint, just elevated. There will be a kind of an elevated pier portion of the wharf, which will be set just a little bit higher to access the floats, which currently becomes totally unusable in some tide events in the gangway actually kind of goes backwards in reverse of what it should. Next slide, please. Thanks, Brittany. This portion of the existing site has a stone revetment. During our investigation, we found that there was some minor erosion at the north and south ends, as well as seemed to be just holes in the revetment from maybe settling stones and things like that. So we look to patch the holes with some smaller coarse rock. One of the design criteria that we went into the project with was to enhance the access to the floats for emergency use and potentially even for some of the slip holders as well. So at the north end of the project site, where that expanded brick walkway is in the parking lot, we're proposing to add a new gangway down to the north end of the finger docks to enhance the access, like I mentioned. And then a big portion of this project is also enhancing the stormwater features on site. Currently, there are multiple stormwater elements, systems. There's one for the pavilion itself, which I think was recently installed in perhaps like 2016, 2017. And then there's one for the parking lot. There's 2 outfall pipes existing. And we're looking to consolidate all of the existing stormwater, at least at this bottom portion of the site, into one system. So what we're proposing is a structured system with chambers, and that will be served by a pretreatment, which is required for the use of this project site as marina, which is an enhancement to what's currently there. And then we'll also have a trench drain at the beginning of the ramp down to the wharf. To treat that stormwater, and then some new catch basins. But at the west end there that we're showing on the right image, a tie-in to the existing roof runoff of the pavilion to have a combined system. Thank you. Brittany, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Cole. So with all of these new additions that Cole just described, we do acknowledge that there is increased coverage, square footage coverage that totals approximately 1,600 square feet. If you don't, and those coverage do impact, the resource areas that are located on the site. So land under the ocean, coastal bank, coastal beach, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and riverfront area. Next slide. So we are planning to do some mitigation plantings to make up some of that coverage. Really, at the southern portion, we're offering a screening of eastern red cedar that are roughly going to be a screen between the abutters property. To the landward side of the parking lot, we are offering or recommending to do a mix of beach plum and bayberry bushes on the landward side of the parking lot. And then right along the new sheet pile wall along the riverfront, we have a small strip for a mixed seed of salt-tolerant plants. And with those mitigation planting areas, we're accumulating about 1,300 square feet. Next slide. You'll notice that we don't even meet a 1-to-1 ratio or even 3-to-1 ratio. So we are requesting, as part of this application, a variance from the Town of Yarmouth Wetland Protection Regulations to allow for reduced mitigation planting, mainly due to, you know, the existing features and the site constraints and the current intended uses. The 2-to-1, 3-to-1 ratio just can't be met. As I said, the 1,300 square feet of mitigation planting is only at a 0.92 to 1 ratio. So for those reasons, we are requesting a variance for reduced mitigation planting. That's basically all we have. Once the NOI is issued, we plan to submit for Chapter 91 minor mod administrative review, and also a PCN permit for Army Corps. And those will happen in the next few weeks once the permit's issued for NOI. And that's all I have, or all that we have. Thank you. Oh, and we did include the planting, which is the document that we submitted to you because it wasn't a part of the original plan set.
Do you have any?
Oh, okay, hi. Congratulations, I'm sure you've worked on this forever, and it's probably a really exciting project for you. I just have a couple of questions, just looking at it, in the perspective of stormwater. What was the choice in keeping the parking lot asphalt, and did you look at impermeable pavers or what have you? Because it seems like you're doing a lot to offset that.
That's a great question, and it was something that we were looking at in the project initially. However, because we're required to do pre-treatment on this project site, because it's a marina use, we had to consolidate it all into a pre-treatment chamber and then filter it back out. So, a great question, but unfortunately, we're not only able to do permeable pavement because of that.
Okay. Is an extensive demolition scope, quite extensive, and do you feel like that the erosion control plan that you lay out is proportionate to that? I mean, I don't know if your erosion control measures will be enough to take care of the impact of the demolition. I know that it's there for construction, but have you looked at that and made sure the impact of the demolition on the site and whether or not the erosion control plan covers it?
Yeah, that's also a great question. Our erosion control plan does have kind of different stages to it. There's the parking lot demolition, which is a pretty intense portion. We're essentially ripping up all the existing asphalt, exposing it to the subgrade, and then at some point we're installing the sheet pile, probably before the parking lot's ripped up, so that we can not have unretained grade when we bring it in. It's also means and methods of construction at that point. But I suspect a condition of this project would be consistent monitoring of the erosion controls. But it's certainly something we have not only the silt barriers, but we also have turbidity curtains in the water when we're doing in-water work too. We're also anticipating a time of year restriction for in-water work from DMF. So with all of that combined, we understand that close monitoring of construction is going to be required, and typically it's a scope that us engineers will be involved in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into logistics. It's more of my concern that you're within the buffer, and so there will be maintenance of erosion control, so that's good. As far as the construction, it's quite substantial, and in a situation like this, you will probably bring in a sizable crane, correct?
Okay, so I could have gone a little bit more into the specific.
Just as it impacts just as it impacts the area. I'm not looking at construction logistics. I'm just concerned.
Yeah, there will be
the ability of this area and involving a substantial sized crane.
Luckily, we do propose doing all the work from the parking lot. We will not need any barge access, so it will be done within the parking lot for mobilization.
Okay.
So that helps a little bit.
Could we request more detail on the erosion control method, construction, or what about a written sort of outline the erosion control measures? I mean, you do have one sheet
Yes, see,
that shows the delineation of it, but do you have a sequencing plan of the erosion control that you can provide us?
We could possibly break this down into a little bit more of a sequence plan. We do have stages on the bottom left of the plan described, but that's the most we go into it in the plan set. I think the NOI narrative probably has a good section on the construction methodology as well.
I do understand what I'm asking.
Certainly do, yeah. And it's part of our obligation as being part of the project too, to kind of work with the commission to maintain the order of conditions and the requirements for erosion control. So, thank you.
And congratulations, it's an exciting project. Hopefully everybody does it right.
You all set?
I'm all set, thank you.
Jack?
I'm interested in the impact of new bulkhead on the neighbors. And you talked about alignment. Can you explain what process you're going through when you talk about alignment and stages of that?
Yeah, sure. So the proposed bulkhead on the south end of the site, Brittany, maybe it's worth pulling up C101, please.
is that this one?
It should be
This 101?
sheet.
I'll look at.
I'll go with
Okay,
it.
it's
But
right
at the
in the
south
middle.
end of the project site, we are retreating the bulkhead back onto the property. So we're essentially creating a gap between the abutting property and our property. So with part of the project is to fill that gap with the same bulkhead material that we're using the FRP, but it also serves as like a terminal end for potential connection and.
Is that this little?
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, in working in other projects, that's helped to, the connection to the abutting properties is always one of interest because of how close can you get right to the property line? How do you connect it without, damaging the existing wall? These sheets do not require impact hammer. They do get installed with a vibratory hammer, so the frequency of the vibration can be a little bit more maintained. But that's also something that will be monitored during construction, is how we install it close to the abutting property. Thank you.
But what about diversion of water during storms onto the neighbors? Is that going to change?
So right now, the neighboring properties are subject to, coastal storm flowage as well. It's an A zone, so it's generally still water. So by adding our bulkhead, we'll be protecting packet landings up to a certain level, right? We're only raising it to elevation 7, and I think the design flood elevation is 12 or 13-ish. So we're not protecting to the 100-year storm. It's impossible to do it on this project site. We're doing, the best we can to maintain the use. So how that affects the neighboring site is, we're protecting our property. We're not rerouting velocity flow because we're not anticipating velocity in this area. It's still water. So with that, we're anticipating no adverse impacts on the abutting properties.
We may find out.
Anybody else? Yeah. Just a couple of questions about the use of the landing. I know it's important. I know Department of Natural Resources finds it, of course, critical in terms of having a place. How many boats do you have there?
Us?
Yours, yeah.
Yeah, we have 2 natural resources boats there that are 1, if not 2, are in all year.
Yep.
And the fireboat is there as well. So a total of 3 public safety boats,
Great.
2 all year and 1.
How many commercial fishing boats?
I think I'd have to count the number of slips, but I think there's like 10 on that side, and then about 20 recreational. It's about 30 overall.
30 commercial boats overall?
Sorry, 10 commercial, 20 recreational.
20 recreational. How do people get access to slips in that facility?
We have a wait list that's.
Wait list. Okay, so they put a name in, and when somebody passes away, maybe it opens up, that kind of thing. Okay.
Yes.
That
You
area's
sit on the
always
list
been-
for 15 years probably.
Because there's going to be a major inappropriate enhancement to that area, obviously. And I guess just for the sake of the public, I'd like folks to know how that facility is managed. And I'm assuming it's managed entirely by the Department of Natural Resources.
Correct.
And that there is some kind of a fair and equitable access to that area in terms of boat owners and so on and so forth.
Correct.
And there's no ramp there, so people put their boats in someplace else and then come over.
Correct. There's no ramp, so the boat is launched elsewhere. And yes, so the wait list, anybody can get on that wait list. Depending on, depending on
How old you are.
Right, exactly. You can put your kids on the wait list.
Yeah, exactly.
And, so anybody can get a slip there. But also the timber bulkhead can be used by any Yarmouth resident free of charge for offloading, gear, passengers, fish. So it's not, the facility is not exclusive to the slip holders.
Okay.
Any town of Yarmouth resident can use, or mooring holder can use that bulkhead. And then even beyond town of Yarmouth residents, people can buy a permit to use that bulkhead. So it's not, by no means is this facility exclusive to the slip holders.
Yeah.
It truly is open to everybody. And we also have a dinghy dock there for people who have moorings, so they can leave their boat on the dinghy dock to get out to a mooring. So it's a multi-use, it's not just.
If there's
for
a
the
parking
slip holders.
space available, town people could come down, park their car, leave it there, and get on another boat and go for it.
I might have some angry slip holders if I answer that question with a yes, but theoretically, yes. So there's parking's always an issue there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's no secret that there are more slips than there are parking spaces in the lower lot.
But it's first come, first served.
It's first come, first served. We have the lower lot, then there's the upper lot by the pavilion, and then the town also owns a parking lot at the corner of Mill Lane and 28, right up the street. So there is plenty of parking, you just have to walk a little bit further. And it's not permitted parking, it's open to everybody.
Okay, and how long is this project going to take once it begins?
Oh, that's a good question for Cole.
I think there's a
Weekends?
Yeah.
well, I think there's something should be said about the segmentation of this project between in-water work and out-of-water work, so that because of time of year restrictions, it's going to be tough to come up with a straightforward construction schedule based on when project goes. So there might need to be temporary fencing and temporary access measures to get to the docks, perhaps signage for recommended parking, in the upper lot. So a project like this might take 6 months or so if there was a straightforward way to conclude it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for all that information.
Anybody else? Jack?
I just have, just for my own information, I know there's plans to redo the Bass River Bridge. How does that affect you? They're not going to disturb this area that you're working on? Do you have any idea, or?
If I had the answers to those questions, I'd be the most popular guy in town. So my understanding about the bridge project, I mean, the state's chosen a contractor. To my knowledge, they've only had the pre-construction meeting, which they invited the counterparts, my counterpart in Dennis and DPW and everybody was on that call. And nobody asked any questions except for me. I must have raised my hand 3 or 4 times about the marina and the impacts. The way I understand the project, and I could be wrong, but the way I understood it at that presentation was that they will be doing all of their staging up the street and even completely off-site, like Matakese or somewhere. They were going to do a bunch of material staging. They would do some at, I think, Mill Lane and some down Mill Lane. That town owns a parcel there as well. To my knowledge, they were not going to be staging or working from Packet. If that does change, then the two things could be happening at, they could interfere with each other, and that's something we'd have to figure out down the road when we talk about construction. Whether this project would be done first or in conjunction with the bridge or after the bridge, I think it's too early to say. I think if things go right, we could get this project done before they do the bridge. I know the other thing with the bridge, they have a lot of pre-work to do before they can do anything drastic. I mean, they have work to do at the intersection, that Four Corners intersection. They have lots of work to do there. They have utilities to move. They have stuff to do to the current bridge to prepare it for demolition. So there's all sorts of steps that are pretty significant before they get to the part that would impact us.
Thank you.
Jack?
Yeah, what is your plan as it relates to the upwelling tanks?
So we have, one's on a dock, so that's a not associated with this part of the project. And then the other one is temporary. That's one that we've got a partnership with the Mass Oyster Project, where it's a public upweller for public viewing. And again, it's temporary. It just sits on that brick walkway. So that would likely remain or potentially be relocated a little bit. That's something that we can just literally move by hand. And if there's a season where it has to be decommissioned or whatever based on construction, that's no big deal. We could work with Mass Oyster Project and put it another spot in town if we had to for the season.
So you have 2 spots,
Correct.
and where is the other one located?
Oh, I'm sorry, 2 at Packet, you mean 2 spots, or you mean in town?
No, I thought you said you had 2 spots.
Right, so there's one on the floating dock itself.
Oh, I didn't see
And then there's the one in the parking lot.
Oh, okay.
Parking lot one is new. Last year, I think, was the first year with that one.
Anybody else? Brittany?
We have DMF comment, and they did give you a time of year restriction, January 15th to May 31st. However, they will allow work to occur in this period if the turbidity curtain is installed outside of the period, which I haven't seen them do before. So that's nice. And I just had one question about the stormwater management pretreatment system with infiltration. With that new system, will the outfall pipes continue to be used, or they just will be there and not used anymore?
Yes, we are we're decommissioning the 2 existing outfalls and then having one for like an overtopping
Single.
event.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all I have. Great job.
Anybody else in the commission? Anybody in the audience? Anybody at home? See anybody? Okay, do I have a motion to accept issuance of an OOC and special conditions, including DMF?
I will.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So passed. Brittany, did I forget to have the 1129 Great Island?
Yeah, it needs to be signed.
So I'm going to send
Not
2
Ed.
What?
Everyone sign this first one except Ed,
Okay.
and we'll need Bradford to sign it.
Everybody can sign the 1129 below. We're supposed to.
Thank you, guys. You're all set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I'll
The permit
send
in your
the second
mailbox.
one down, which is the one we just talked about and approved. We didn't prove anything else.
No, that's it.
So I'm not too screwed up. 7 Grist Lane, what happened to that?
We didn't bring it.
You what?
We didn't bring it. It was too much paper, so you just put it on the side.
All right, moving ahead. Zero Center Street, SE 832487, proposed mechanical and chemical invasive species management in abandoned cranberry bog with salt marsh, BVW, coastal and inland banks, their buffer zones, land subject to coastal flowage, and the riverfront area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello? Thank you. Yeah, I can put them at the window.
We have somebody on,
Yes, we have.
We are, Mr. Chairman. I believe we're going to be bringing up Naomi Valentine. She is joining me today. Is she there? We've got her up as a presenter. I just wanted to just to say a few words because if you're following the Bayview Bogs Restoration Project, when you look at this notice, there's no indication of a connection to it. So I just wanted to just say a few words about this particular application and notice of intent. This is a key component of the restoration project. We were here at your last meeting to give you sort of a big picture overview in terms of what we're trying to do with Bayview Bogs. A couple of weeks ago, we had an open house at the site that was incredibly well attended. We've received a lot of positive response. And for those of you who might know, just a little bit of background, the Conservation District is a creation of the Massachusetts legislature. We were created in 1947, and our job is to assist landowners, big and small, with methods and funding and technical assistance to conserve natural resources on the land. We partner very closely with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the district's job is to help prioritize federal funding for our district area, which includes Yarmouth and all of Barnstable County. So for the past, ever since its inception, we've been helping bring federal funding to do conservation here on Cape Cod. And in the recent, I'd say the past 40 years, we've been heavily involved. The bulk of the funding that we've been securing has been for ecological restoration, habitat restoration, shellfish bed restoration. We've been very involved in those projects. In Yarmouth, we've had a number of projects in the town of Yarmouth. The district steered federal funding for the creation of a new fish ladder out at the grist mill. We've been heavily involved with the Friends of Bass River. We see federal funding coming in. We believe we have a very good chance of success in getting funding for the Bass River restoration work that's being led by the Friends of Bass River. We provided funding for the new bridge on Parker's River in order to enhance the flushing and improve the water quality conditions in that area. So we've had a history in Yarmouth. We've got projects in virtually every Cape Cod town. Every year we generally make a request for anywhere from between $10 to $30 million, and those dollars are used to implement projects that are in our overall plan. And Yarmouth has a lot of projects, and this is now the latest, the other one that we're working on, the Bayview Bogs. The district is partnered with Cape Cod Healthcare and the Massachusetts Division of Ecological Restoration. And when I came before you at our last meeting, we had our consultants, Fuss and O'Neill, sort of lay out the broad outlines of a restoration plan. And we are in the early stages of the permitting process on that. So we came in essentially for just an opportunity to brief you on the big picture in terms of where that's going. That brochure was hot off the press. We were able to get it in time for our open house out at the site, and I wanted to make sure that you had a copy of it. We have a website. We keep updating it. There's a lot of information on the overall project, but we see this as a huge asset to the community. And so tonight, Naomi is here to sort of present to you with this request, an important component of the project. So we very much appreciate your taking this up tonight. And without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Naomi.
Thank you, Mark, for that really great introduction. Just for the record, I'm Naomi Valentine from SWCA Environmental Consultants, and I'm going to be presenting on this notice of intent, which is phase 1 of the overall restoration project that Mark was just referencing. I know that you all have heard a lot about this project in the past, so I'll sort of glaze over the overall restoration and site information, since I believe you're already familiar, and try to focus in on the actual scope of work here, which, as Mark mentioned, is invasive plant management. We are requesting a 5-year order of conditions for this ecological restoration limited project, and the sole scope is invasive plant management. You can go to the next slide. So, like I said, I'll glaze over some of this, but just to comment on the fact that this bog has been sitting for many years, 25 to 30 years, and during that time, many invasive plants have come onto the site. And the purpose behind initiating this phase 1 of restoration is to manage as many invasive plants as feasible, particularly high priority species that can spread very aggressively through construction activities prior to breaking ground on the actual restoration construction. So that's the context of the project itself and why you're seeing this ahead of the full restoration project. It was very deliberate to try to make sure to get the invasives under control before they can start spreading off-site to other places on-site to try to make the restoration as successful as possible. Okay, next slide, please. Actually, you can go forward to The previous slide just had written out all of the resource areas that were on there, and I know this was mentioned at the top of our spot on the hearing, but there is coastal bank, salt marsh, land subject to tidal action, land subject to coastal storm flowage, bordering vegetated wetlands and all associated buffer zones, bordering land subject to flooding, and 200-foot riverfront area. So quite a few resource areas on site due to the fact that it's a very large site very close to the water there. All of the impacts are proposed are only to invasive plants management, and as such, none of the impacts are permanent. The idea is to allow some native vegetation to fill in where the invasives are currently. Okay, next slide, please. This is just a list of the invasives that have been noted on site thus far. The initial pre-management survey was done, unfortunately, at not the best time of year, just based off of project timing. But the project team was able to identify all of these invasives, and we feel very confident in the species that are present. What is less certain right now is the exact density and distribution of all of them, only because some weren't very easily identifiable at the time of the survey. The invasive plants that I mentioned earlier that are of the highest concern are Japanese knotweed and Phragmites, or common reed, sometimes people refer to it. The reason that those are such a high concern is that they can spread by a number of avenues, one of which is by fragmentation of the rhizomatous root system, and that is what we want to make sure is eliminated prior to construction, because as I'm sure all of you know, those invasives are everywhere and they're very, very hard to manage once they get out of control. The majority of the invasives on site are woody species, which are fairly easy to manage relative to those more aggressive too. And there is a decent amount of purple loosestrife on site, which currently, just based off of its density and how widespread it is, and the fact that there is already probably a very aggressive seed bank on site, likely will be managed initially through the construction activities. However, because it can put out so much seed in any given year, any populations within the site that are easily manageable will be managed ahead of construction. Next slide, please. So the types of management proposed include manual or mechanical management, as well as chemical management. Everything that will be done on the mechanical side will be including hand tools only. There are a lot of access restraints on site, really no larger equipment or anything that doesn't include individual people going on foot is going to be possible until the restoration stage. So that, along with the fact that we are trying to eliminate as many populations as possible prior to restoration construction, is why herbicide application is the primary proposed method for most of the invasive plants on site, being that for those plants that it is recommended, it's the most effective method. The populations of woody invasives that'll be prioritized at this stage are on the shorter side, sparsely to moderately dense, meaning not just a very, very dense sea of vegetation that would take a lot of time and effort to get through, but would be pretty well effectively and easily managed with something like an excavator at the time of construction. That will not be prioritized over these shorter, more sparse to moderately dense populations. Garlic mustard will also be prioritized, and that's one plant that can be pretty easily managed just through hand pulling. The only caveat to that is, again, if there is a really, really expansive, dense stand of garlic mustard, it's more effective to treat with herbicide. It has 2 stages of growth, that plant, so we would be treating one specific stage, the first year stage, before it can go to seed with that herbicide. And again, not to repeat myself a million times, but the large woody invasives will be prioritized during the construction phase or anything that's very difficult to access with high density. We're trying to do the absolute best we can to manage the very numerous and expansive invasives on site before construction. And so we just want to make sure we put as much time and effort and budget into that as opposed to some things that'll be able to be taken care of during construction and won't be as high of a risk for spreading throughout the site. Okay, so the next slide, please, is on our schedule. The hope is to start the invasive plant management as soon as we're issued an order of conditions, if we're issued an order of conditions, and that will proceed through the next phase of work. So you might be thinking, okay, what's going to happen to this order of conditions when the next phase kicks off? Prior to submitting the next notice of intent for the next phase of work, this order will be requested to be closed out so that invasive control during construction can be included in the next phase. We're assuming that we'll be able to get 3 years of management in at least, and we're hoping for 5 if needed, but that's all depending on the planning and how the rest of the project pans out. Because the different invasive plants on site have different treatment windows, one complete treatment is one treatment of all of our target invasives in a given year. So there will be 3 treatments at distinct time periods throughout a year that will happen annually, if that makes sense. So when I say one full treatment, I mean each invasive that we're targeting that year has been managed to some degree. And there will be 3 different distinct times throughout the year when that management will occur to make sure that we're hitting those invasives at the appropriate time. Monitoring will happen following invasive control in every year of management, and associated reporting will follow so that we can track the progress on site. One thing that's very important in the way of monitoring is to recognize that site conditions might change. Adaptive management is very, very important in the world of invasive plants. So one method that appears that it'll work very well this year, if the conditions or the population dramatically changes at that part of the site, you might need to change your approach to make sure that you're not using herbicide unnecessarily or continuing a management method that might not be the best choice for that specific situation. So the monitoring is sort of dual purpose to see how the invasive management is going, report that to the commission and all relevant parties, and then also propose what will be happening in the following year based off of the results that we see. So the next slide I put up just so that you could see it existed. I'm not going to read this out or expect anybody to read it off the screen, but there is a matrix here of proposed management approaches by species and species category. So we break things down into if it's woody or non-woody, and then what's its main avenue of spread, being fruit or seed, fragmentation, rhizomatous fragmentation, things of that nature, because those are usually the groupings of how you would want to manage. There's a star next to the most effective and initially proposed management method between mechanical, manual, and herbicide application. But both methods are listed here regardless in case site conditions change and we want to choose another, and so that you're presented with all of the potential options that would happen on site. And that is all I have. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Anybody on the board? Go ahead, Sally.
Hi, thank you for such a great presentation, and also this study that you gave us. It's unbelievably comprehensive, and but I'm a little confused. It might be a question for Brittany. Are we looking at phase one of the phase, what are we looking at? There's two studies here. There's a phase one invasive plant management, and then.
Yeah,
there's
I
another-
agree, Naomi. The application materials are very contradictory. It's unclear to me what you're requesting, whether, because a part of your narrative mentions that no soil disturbance will occur, but then the invasive species plant management document includes excavation activities, including grubbing. So it's unclear if you're going for all phase one only, if phase two is in the next permit application phase, and you added that for context. Is that correct?
Correct, and I'm sorry about that. There should have been language in the narrative that specifically called out, I think it's section 3.1 in the invasive plant management plan. We wanted the management plan to be holistic, and so that's why it was presented for all phases of work. But this notice of intent is only for phase one, and there really should have been language in the narrative to say, yes, there's an invasive plant management plan attached. This is what we're going to be using, but please disregard mentions to future phases after phase one. This is just pre-construction in this NOI right now.
Okay, 'cause the other thing.
Oh, go ahead.
What was conflicting to me was in the document, I don't know if she knows what I'm looking at, the notice of intent, Bayview Bogs Restoration Phase 1. I'll just read it. It says, in addition to management, the applicant would like to conduct post-management monitoring events annually if additional funding becomes available. And it's excellent language, because it's, it says that this is all based on evidence-based design. If we do this post-management, we'll know if it works and et cetera. But, so are you going to do that or not, or is that even applicable in this proposal? Are we addressing?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
Go
you.
ahead.
There will be post-management monitoring and reporting. Right now, there is already funding in place for this initial phase for monitoring and reporting associated with the management.
Yearly as it?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And I'd like to call attention to my colleagues, in this document on page 7, there's this excellent paragraph about how important the monitoring is, especially because we are looking at other projects of invasive species, and there's the first question people ask is does it work? Does it work? So I'm really happy that you know how important it is that you have this post-management monitoring. So again, thank you for such a thorough report. I'm just a little confused on the scope. Do we want clarification on that, or are we going to? Okay.
Anybody else? Jack?
Just to make a guess, I would imagine that your adaptive management process confuses the ability to be able to answer this question, and that what's important, I would imagine, if it's for you to be talking to everybody involved, ourselves as well as other town departments, and as you have to change all of your processes along you go, and one change in one plant's treatment method can cause changes in other plants that be mixed in or bordering. So I think is that a fair statement? Or is that confusing?
Could you try rewording? I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Adaptive management is knowing when you're going along and you've run into trouble, changes, whatever. Could be from a money source, could be from research results, could be monitoring, and you have to really go back and change the budget, which the budget people don't like. So this has been happening for about 30, 40 years. And I think that it really does take a high level of management. And I think that Mark can attest to this with the district, that farmers are totally flummoxed often because the grants change, the time of year of production changes, weather, and so you're really in trouble. And that's why people say, oh, let's change this and it'll make things simpler. Not really true. It makes it more complex and everybody has to be involved more often.
I think I see what you're getting at. So we luckily do have a lot of options here, especially if you look at the full time scale. So I don't think the budget will be an issue when we have to change gears in terms of invasive management. It could be small changes, things that would affect what herbicides being used, but not necessarily how much time it's going to take. Or we thought we could effectively manage this population of invasive shrubs, but it's not going to plan, so we might want to pivot and have those be targeted during the construction phase. Changes like that. So we always try to think of the project as a whole to try to reach the end goals, but we should still be able to stay the general course. It's just that maybe not all of the gray willow on site will be treated exactly the same way as we thought from the beginning. So I feel confident that with our different tools in the toolbox, we should be able to stay on course. But that is why we included multiple different options for management in that matrix.
Okay. Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. Thank you. You're looking for a 5-year opportunity to accomplish the eradication, I guess it is, of the invasive species. Is that correct?
Correct, yes,
Okay.
5-year request.
And how long, this is just for some background information, so the bog has sat there uncultivated and so on and so forth for 40-something years, is that correct?
The sections we're looking at, I was told 30 years, but there are some portions that were longer. Yes, I don't
Okay.
remember exactly.
All right, great. So there's really little argument that this work has to be done. I mean, it's been neglected for 40-some odd years. It can take another 5 years to correct the existence of the invasive species. And it's alarming that this has transpired, but now is the time to act upon it. And so I'm thankful that that's happening. It also, though, unfortunately gives me a sense of concern about other bogs in the area that need the same kind of attention. And I'm hoping that, and I guess this is more directed at Mr. Forrest, that some awareness exists regarding, for example, the bog on White Rock Road, and maybe there's others around that I'm not aware of, because it just seems to get worse and worse and worse if we let things get out of hand. It's very important and wonderful that this is being approached and dealt with at the Bayview Bog, and I hope that this is just the beginning of attention to other places as well. And I just wanted to kind of say that. So thank you for a very complete and understandable presentation regarding the work that is intended. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm happy to respond to that.
Oh, thanks.
The Massachusetts Division of Ecological Restoration, one of our partners, has within it a very active abandoned cranberry bog restoration program with a team and with staff. And so that's the group that we interact with on a regular basis. And I think one of the things that I find heartening is that we're institutionalizing this, so as they get involved in a multitude of projects, we can all benefit from the lessons learned in all of these. It's a relatively new program. I remember when we started doing ecological restoration work, and the Division of Ecological Restoration didn't exist. So it's great to have the Commonwealth making investments in this program. The governor just released an environmental bond bill the other day. There's a lot of money in it for ecological restoration, resiliency. In fact, there's probably some resources related to the Packet Landing project in that bond bill, assuming it passes the legislature, of course. So I'm very encouraged about just institutionalizing and working with all of the varied groups that are now emerging and taking an interest in this. Like I said, for a while we were kind of alone, but what you're seeing now is the Friends of Bass River taking an active interest in this, the Harwich Conservation Trust, the Brewster Conservation Trust. So what's happening is the network of conservation organizations that are involved in this kind of work, including the APCC, of course. There's just an expanded number of organizations interacting, communicating, working together. There's no one project where there's just one partner. Each project has a multitude of projects or partners. So we're partnered with DER on this project. There are other projects we're partnered with DER and the Fish and Wildlife Service. So there's a tremendous amount of work going on in this area now, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned. I think the great thing about doing this work here and partnering with, working in Yarmouth is as we progress by monitoring and sharing the results of our monitoring with you, this is information that you learn, you acquire, you become more knowledgeable, because as you said, we're going to be doing more of this kind of work in Yarmouth and in other communities as well. So I think it's all to the good that we're taking this approach, because I think this approach benefits everybody, all our partners, including the town of Yarmouth.
Thank you. Anybody else in the commission? Any questions? Anybody in the audience? Yes, would you go up to and introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Cindy Van Dorn. I'm sort of an abutter to the bog. My main concern is the herbicides and things that are being used. There's a lot of water flow. There's a lot of water in that bog, and it flows to Lewis Bay on one near my home and then further down just a little bit in Hyannis Park. And also, would these herbicides, the chemicals, kind of be a problem for Lewis Bay? And also there is an abundance of wildlife that's in the bog. Not only the coyotes everyone knows about, but deer, rabbits, lots of waterfowl that spend time in that water area there. Will these herbicides and things affect them? I know eventually they have to all be gone somehow, but the chemicals, does that affect the box turtles and everything else that's out there, rabbits, who knows what else, but I know there's deer out there as well. And I just am concerned about the chemicals affecting the wildlife and also coming from the runoff from the bog into Lewis Bay. So those are my main concerns.
I can address that question if that's appropriate, no Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. The way that the herbicides will be applied on site will be selective to specific vegetation. So this is something that my team particularly specializes in. We don't do broadcast spraying or wholesale herbicide application across an area. The goal really is restoration. So even before the construction can start with the active restoration, the goal is that some native vegetation will grow back in the wake of us treating the invasive vegetation. And it would be completely against that goal to overspray surrounding natives. So just to comment on that, it is going to be very selective. The most selective and most effective method will be chosen for each plant, and that's what's presented in that table. As such, there won't be any application that's going directly to any standing water. And the way that we calculate the percentage of herbicide within each spray is to only use the amount necessary to translocate into the root system. And at that point, they're very stable in the plant itself, and also bond very tightly to soil. So with that careful management approach in mind, there should not be any effect to water bodies or downstream. In regard to active wildlife activity on site. We already have plans to have turtle monitors looking out for turtles during invasive plant management. And we would never spray into an area that we haven't traversed. So we won't be spraying at any wildlife directly. And the time that it takes the herbicide to dry on the foliage or the cut stem, for example, is very quick. It's certainly quicker than any wildlife would want to come back into an area after we've walked through it, for example. I hope that answers the question or some of the concern.
Now, how about the rain? Kind of when it rains or something, will that dilute that into the waterways, even though you're keeping it away from the waterways?
No, and only because there is that really tight bonding of the molecule itself of the herbicide at its end fate, and there are strict restrictions on the labels for how close to a rain event you're able to treat. So we would never apply an herbicide if it was just going to be washed away by a storm event, for example.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Anybody else? I think I see.
I have one question.
Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
Do you have a plan for what you're going to get rid of the disposal of these invasive species you're taking out of there?
So the invasive species that are going to be cut will be left in place as if they were dying in place, mostly because once the restoration starts up, there's going to be a lot of movement of existing vegetation and soil. And so it's not going to be a detriment to the site to leave them there. It's going to keep any berries or seed that's on the plant in the location where it already exists, as opposed to potentially spreading it elsewhere. And it would sort of be unnecessary to remove and a cost that we don't really need to incur on the project, since there's going to be a lot of movement of soil and vegetation once restoration starts.
Okay, thanks.
Brittany? Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a question. So are you the group that's going to actually be doing the management, or are you subcontracting that out?
Well, my team will be doing the active restoration.
Okay,
Or invasive control, sorry.
And do you, are you SERP certified individual or company?
Almost all of the members of my team, which is the ecological restoration team at our firm, are SERPs or SERPITs. I'm a SERP. We have a few members of the team that aren't yet SERPs and a few that are SERPITs. But yes, most of them.
Yeah, I would only ask that they be SERP certified individuals or working directly under the supervision of a SERP certified individual. That's all I have.
Anybody else before I turn to Brittany? Okay, Brittany?
Naomi, I sent you a list of email questions. Did you receive them?
I did, yes. I responded Wednesday.
Okay, I did not get that email. So if you could resend that. And if you could, don't mind stating your responses. So variable milfoil is photographed, but I understand that you're not proposing to manage any aquatic invasive species under this application.
Correct, and I'll forward my responses right now too.
Okay, I'm not sure what happened. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Let's see. So the reason that we're not going after any aquatics is that there's going to be a lot of disruption of the existing canals or channels rather within the site. The end plan, as I understand, is similar to other DER bog restorations where somewhat of a natural foul leg is going to be identified and recreated. So most of the time the first stage is filling in those ditches, at which point the milfoil will not be able to survive on site. And there's no risk to it staying on site right now. So as opposed to taking an herbicide application approach to eradicating it, we're just waiting for it to be kind of as a positive byproduct eradicated during the restoration construction phase.
Okay, great. So it's only found within the ditches and not in any of the standing water that's proposed to remain as standing water in the phase 2?
That's my understanding. We can certainly report to the Conservation Commission if it's noted out otherwise.
Okay,
once
that
on
would be
site.
great. And just a general recommendation to the Conservation Commission about the application in general. I appreciate and understand your wish to give as much background and future information as possible, but I would recommend a plan revision excluding all information that you're not attempting to permit under this application, as to be clear, because you're also in the ISPM mentioning stockpiling and burying invasive plant material, which you have noted that you're not proposing to do under this section. Just to be perfectly clear, I think we should have that revised and resubmitted before we approve to issue this permit. And my last question is, so you mentioned you want a 5-year permit and you have intentions of closing this invasive species management permit out prior to applying for the full phase 2 construction permit, but in the pamphlet it says you're going to be applying for that in the fall. Is that incorrect?
For the NOI for restoration construction,
Yeah.
I would have to refer to Julie Busa on that, who's heading the next phase of permitting. I don't know if Mark is aware of the plan.
I think, yeah, we can get some more clarity on this, but I think we want to make it clear to the community that we intend to begin a formal
Yeah.
process, starting with, the necessary MEPA filings.
Okay.
You know.
And I think that would also, it would just benefit from having all of the surface work only, no excavation, herbicide application in this first permit, so that even if you're opening a related project under construction, this one would still be valid to keep open if needed, because none of the work would be overlapping. Because if any of it would overlap, then it would need to be closed prior to the restoration construction one. So it would just be beneficial for everyone to separate out all of those steps. And just a note that there are 3 open orders, that certificates, requests for certificates of compliance have been submitted and will be reviewed at our next hearing. And one of them was for restoration, so it is kind of directly related. So that I recommend that the board continue for revisions to reflect our conversation and annual monitoring.
Can I ask you a question? I understand why, because we normally do say if you have if you got an open order of conditions and you create a new, or you seek new permitting, that you would typically close the order out.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, wouldn't it make more sense to let them keep that open? Because I'm assuming, to be honest with you, I would have liked to have seen this as one big restoration project, and then we won't have to have this discussion. But obviously, you're doing and spending a huge amount of money on invasive management, and I think it would behoove the project moving forward. You're going to have to continue to do invasive management. It's not like you're going to do 5 years and then be done with it. So, I would like to see something. So either allow through continuing conditions for a certificate of compliance if you move toward the idea of closing out the order, but still providing for invasive management moving into the future.
I think that's what I was saying. I think we agree that.
Okay. Yeah, I
like
want
with
to make sure we're not just closing it out and then saying.
Yeah, that's what I was suggesting, is that as long as we separate any excavation from this permit, then we would be able to keep it open when they apply for the full construction. So they're separate.
So we want to continue this to the 17th of July or August 7th?
That's up to the applicant. Do you need extra time, or is the 17th okay?
The next available date would be fine. I can get the revised materials very quickly.
Okay.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to continue to July 17th? So moved, Jack. Second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, no signature, right?
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have continued requests for COCs. I've got 5 we can vote on at the same time. Number 9, which is SE 832328 from Stephen Bickerton of 122 Exeter Road. Number 11, SE 832138 for Clifford Betron from 9 Flake Yard Lane. And then 13, 14, and 15, SE 832311 from John Griffin and Ann Saldastani from 1167 Great Island Road. 83, SE 83 1494, Cynthia Duchamp, 38 Charles Street, and SE 83 2306, a partial for Jeffrey and Ann Fanara from 116 Mayflower Terrace. I hear a motion to accept those. So move, Jack.
Second.
Second, Bradford. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, they're on their way down, I think. So let me just make sure I get the right ones. So we'll start with this one.
Did you have anything to say for that one? I don't think so.
What are you here for?
Oh, I'm sorry. He was supposed to tell you not to come. You're all set. So I do have a question for you. The Realtor requested to pick up the COC on Monday. I told him I need written permission from you in order to let him do that. Because you're the representative. Yeah, no, that's okay. Okay. Okay, we'll let you know if it's ready yet. Happy 4th. Sorry for the confusion.
Okay. Great Island. And Charles. More from Mayflower. Okay, well, let's make its way down. We need to go back to SE 831165, Yama Shorts condo, 29 Lewis Bay Boulevard. They want a continuance, is that right?
Yes.
We need to vote on that, right?
August 7th, yes.
So I need a motion to continue.
So moved.
Okay. Ed and Brad?
Which one
Bradford,
was-
all in favor of
Aye.
continuing 29 Lewis Bay Boulevard? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, and then SE 832338, 11 Prince Road, Alice Joslo, continued to July 17th. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, okay, Jack for second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, next is,
Have your pen for a second. Mine just ran out of ink.
Take a breath.
okay. Is something different. Okay, so we're going to Choba Engineering Group. Okay, LLC, there's no number here. For Ekaterina and Family LLC, 1272, 1276, 1282 on Route 28, proposed raise and replace of gas station with canopy. Convenience store and residential buildings, including new septic. Pending supplemental info for peer review needs to be continued to 7/17. Do I hear a motion to continue?
So moved.
Second.
Second, okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, all right,
Opposed?
opposed.
You didn't call, that's all.
EPA applications have been posted. You want to talk about that, Ms. Brittany?
They're available on the town website if you have a CPA application to file.
Okay. All right,
Due September 5th.
What is CPA?
CPA is a Community Preservation Act funds, so there's each member of the community pays CPA as part of their taxes, and they're available for projects. The Community Preservation Committee gets together and reviews projects in order to recommend any for town meeting, and then they get voted on to issue the funding for projects at town meeting. In the past, they've been used, they're in different sections: open space, recreation. Open space and recreation is one category, historic and housing. So you can use it for park projects, housing projects, recreation, and they use it for like baseball fencing. We used it for the Chase Brook Park project. It's just a great opportunity for funding.
Okay, cool, thank you.
And Paul's our
Yeah,
representative.
there's been a lot of
Paul's
projects, that benefit from that, those available funds. There's a whole application process, of course, and everything else. Friends of Bass River have access money. The Thatcher Hall, which used to be the new church, that comes to mind. Just a lot of different historic and recreational projects across the town over several years. A lot of money has gone into those things. And, it's an open meeting type of a process where there are representatives from various boards, and it's an interesting and very valuable kind of a part of our whole system. So if you ever want to attend a meeting,
Thank you.
fine. It's good. It's a good group.
Okay, so that's a good transition to the two letters of support.
I don't know whether it'd be appropriate, but I just wanted to add another thing, if I can.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure there wasn't any confusion when the reorganization was discussed about my continuing as the vice chair. And if anybody was interested and you wanted to have some sort of a vote or whatever, that's perfectly okay with me. I thought I was a little confused by it in a sense, so I just wanted to see if you want to bring it up again, if somebody else wants to be nominated, if you want to have a contest as to who can get the most votes. I don't really care. But I'm happy to do it, but if someone else is interested in it, by all means, have a vote for the different people, okay? I hope I'm making myself clear.
You are.
It won't hurt my feelings. I might cry, but it's okay. Yeah.
Is there anybody else who want to put their name forward for vice chair?
I had expressed interest, but it was mainly because I thought Paul didn't want to do it anymore, so I'm happy to let him continue. No hard feelings.
You're good, okay. I didn't want you to be upset at all.
That was,
I'm
that
very
was,
happy
yeah,
to continue.
also my misunderstanding, Paul. Sorry, I thought you were no longer interested.
I'm also the vice chair, by the way, of the Community Preservation Committee. People tend to like to give me vice chairman types of, positions. So anyway, but it's okay. All right, just wanted to make sure that everything was okay on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right, Brittany?
So often when staff pursue grants, they ask for letters of support. So we have 2 requests for letters of support for 2 separate grant applications. One of them is for the DPW. They are pursuing, can you read the, I forgot what it was exactly. They're pursuing DEP Salt Marsh Restoration and Monitoring Grant for a tidal restriction project and for a culvert replacement on Thatcher Shore Road and Short Wharf Creek. It is a degraded salt marsh system, and they've had a community engagement public meeting for input. They're working with Tigan Bond as their consultant to try and release this tidal restriction by replacing this very small and damaged culvert that's causing also, I think, a sinkhole in the roadway. So they are intending to apply for that grant funding for the next fiscal year, and they're requesting a letter of support from the Conservation Commission to pursue that funding to release this tidal restriction on Thatcher Shore Road.
I'm sorry, who are they asking the money from?
So it's a grant program through the DEP. It's for a salt marsh restoration and monitoring grant.
How much are they asking?
I don't think they included that. I think it might be awarded based on the number of applications. So they don't specify.
Okay.
Does this relate to, there was a meeting a while ago at the DPW office, I think about this very same thing, where there were 3 different options that were
Yeah.
presented by the town.
Exactly.
So was a decision made that they're going to be putting in a bigger culvert? Is that the essence of it? That they're looking for, the
Yeah, they're-
town looking for the grant money?
Yes, the town DPW. And so they're looking to replace the culvert with a 9.5 wide culvert box and increase the elevation of the roadway to 12 feet. I think that was
It was alternative one.
alternative one. Yeah, okay.
7.5 by 9.5, I think.
Yeah.
I think that they said that the neighbors were pretty much going for alternative one.
Yeah, I think that was the most
They were.
popular alternative. And so the grant would allow them to get through the design phase. So they haven't begun the design phase yet.
So it was clear in that meeting, I don't know, that alternative one, putting in a bigger culvert, is really kicking the can down the road a piece. But there weren't any other really great suggestions for what to do. So I think it's important to, well, that's my opinion in terms of alternative one. I think they do need a letter of support, but, you know,
Is alternative 1. So alternative 2 involved increasing the elevation of the roadway even further with the same box culvert. And 3 was to terminate the road and put a pedestrian bridge. But so the preferred alternative, was alternative 1. And so through the grant, they would be seeking the grant funding to support design and permitting.
Well, the other alternatives would be a lot more expensive. So,
Or eliminating the roadway.
the alternative 2, I think, was raising the whole road some distance.
An additional 1.2 feet.
Yeah, alternative 3 was ending the road from 2 directions. That went over really well. And you know, so people would drive down Thatcher Shore and have to turn around to get out, you know.
It would be convenient.
I want the ferry service across the road.
And so this letter of support wouldn't stake the Conservation Commission on anything. We would just allow them to pursue this funding opportunity, and they would likely need to pursue additional funding opportunities for match.
Assuming they would be getting permitting for good stream, or a good stream crossing standards and everything else, because that pipe
Definitely.
is, that's
This
pathetic.
is poor stream crossing standards as it is right now.
Well, I make a motion to have the chair sign a letter of support.
I'll second that.
Look at that picture, yeah.
All in favor?
Yeah. Aye. Aye.
Great.
Opposed?
Anybody opposed? Sorry.
Okay, and there's one.
I hear everybody say, yeah, it's hard to.
Sorry, there's one additional grant opportunity that I'll be applying, that I'm hoping to apply for, pending a letter of support from you all. And it is a local acquisition for natural diversity land grant program for fiscal year 26, in order to pursue priority parcel for land acquisition, which has been for the purpose of open space. It's currently a vacant lot, and it has been through executive session with the select board, and I can't really disclose any other information, but it would just allow me to pursue this grant.
This is another letter of support.
Yeah, to submit a letter of
Move
support.
we instruct the chairman to sign a letter of support to that effect.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? I did get it in. All
Snatch that land up.
That's all.
right. And I mean, somebody gave me this, it's got a level on it. It's got a-
Oh, you really like that.
You write a good letter.
Quite elegant.
If I can get a little.
Misspellings in there, I'll be very.
I would never do that to you. I would never do that to you.
Remember, you just put a new one in.
Here you go.
That was too sensible.
Okay, no minutes. They get done on time. And anybody have any other business?
Is there meeting or minutes to be approved?
No, I said no minutes because it wasn't done on time.
Oh, I see. There's a misspelling, or, no, 2 words in there.
I didn't send them, so you didn't read them.
Very busy office. And poor Brittany's getting busier as we move along, too, so. Anybody else? Okay. Do we like to hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Anybody seconding?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned at 7:10.
No.